AMD, what can we say, Daniel? I'm going to call an audible on that one. I mean, they had an absolute stunning quarter. They had a slight beat on the top. They had a slight beat on the bottom. They held guidance annually for 2022, but they lowered Q3 primarily on the backs of uncertainty of the PC market. They lost between 5 and 7% after hours. They gained a little bit on opening day. The next day, I think it was pretty much a complete overreaction to short-term phenomena. And quite frankly, people aren't taking the long look of AMD, who still has a lot of upside opportunity. First off, you have the GPU opportunity on the consumer and the data center side. And I think as a comparison, you can look to NVIDIA and what they've done on that. You now have AMD in the IPU market through the acquisition of Pensando and Xilinx. And then you have an entire business through the acquisition of Xilinx. And then you have in the future the combination of AMD and Xilinx technologies, particularly in the AI space. Now, I can't invest in AMD, and of course, I don't recommend investments. But I am very bullish on the long-term future of AMD. I mean, heck, let's talk short-term. Let's talk second quarter, right? Data center revenue up 83%. None of that increase is due to Xilinx. All 83% was driven by, was funny, I almost said Opteron, driven by Epic. OpInc up, just 2.3x. We're not talking percentages when we talk about AMD. We're talking about X, okay? Orders of magnitude. Client business, right? These are CPUs and APUs. 25% growth, again, moderate, because we had a moderated quarter out there in the market, driven by Ryzen notebooks. Operating income only up 25%, not bad. 25% of revenue, 25% increase in OpInc. Gaming up 32%, really about consoles. Gaming cards were down. I got to tell you, I'd really like to see what the long-term future is for AMD in PC gaming. I know they have the right people in there, people like Frank Azor in there running that piece. But if I look at the growth that NVIDIA's had, really eclipses what AMD has been able to do. Embedded, brand new segment. I mean, AMD did some embedded, but not a lot. Up 2,000%. And again, this is 100% the inclusion of Xilinx. I'm not going to go, batty or crazy over the percent because it was driven by Xilinx. Final comment here. I really do appreciate the new AMD, right? The old AMD was kind of like each quarter it was a different thing, but not every business unit was hitting on all cylinders, right? But with data center, client, gaming, and the new embedded, now with Xilinx, short term, the company is hitting on all cylinders, and I think this is one of these companies that the best is yet to come.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird week in the market. I think what happened with AMD was after Intel's relatively tough, really tough quarter, is probably the right word, people kind of maybe overestimated how much of the market shifted over to AMD, and maybe didn't fully appreciate that the slowing demand for the PC was real. Now, in the data center, the results for AMD were pretty remarkable. The company has got things going in the right direction. Very hard to not appreciate the growth and the success that the company is having. The acquisition strategy seems to be pulling it along in the right direction with Pensando, like you said, with IPUs. That's a very important space. The Xilinx business, we're seeing a real stunning growth in demand for FPGAs, and we'll talk about that more when we get to Lattice in a little bit, because they had a remarkably good quarter. So I think that was a little bit of what happened. Now, I do love how, in AMD's press releases, they break things out on a year-over-year basis. So, we all have seen that AMD's sort of PE ratio got a little bit heavy. In fact, at times at 80, 100 plus. And, when you see Intel at sub 10, you're kind of saying that's the market betting on AMD having a very bright future and not so much for other companies. But then, you see like a Qualcomm still at 12 and you're going, well, maybe we're a little over our skis on these valuations. NVIDIA suffers a similar fate. So at times, the expectations on a quarter basis are so big that a great result isn't good enough. And I think that's what we kind of had happen here. I mean, you look at just some of these numbers, and I like in the release, they really break this out. But year over year, you saw revenue up 70%, profit up 93%, margin went up this quarter. Operating income up 115%, and net income up 119%. So you hit on the head, Pat, where there was weakness. This is cyclical. Anybody that's out there that doesn't believe we saw multiple years of PC sales pulled forward is naive. Now, that's not to say that the hybrid work trends won't continue to see a higher volume of PC sales than maybe before, but at some point, everybody has 1, 2, 3 PCs, and there's no more PCs to sell.
Yeah.
Then you've got cycles, and you just got to wait for the refresh cycles to come through. But that number should remain higher potentially if the workforce doesn't contract significantly. The only other thing I'll say is that, in the data center, the company's strong. Where I'm kind of watching out for AMD and Intel, respectively, has just been the momentum for ARM. There's a lot of interest in ARM right now. That hasn't changed. You're seeing the cloud hyperscalers making big investments. Ampere, you've heard updates from Microsoft, Google, Amazon. And I think we're going to start seeing more data on that soon, on how much that actually represents. And as that data becomes available, we're going to have to understand that that's going to create market share shifts for both AMD and Intel. However, AMD is clearly executing well. Even though they're a couple quarters behind on their newest products, they're still getting it out faster than their competitor in Intel, which the Sapphire Rapids delay was probably the number one reason for the shortfall this quarter. So great quarter for AMD. Momentum continues to be good. And by the way, you had a great little appearance on CNBC. We'll put that in the show notes, Pat. I got to throw my buddy here a little bit of lob of praise. So everybody that wants to kind of get the quick take instead of listening to me garbling on for 4 minutes, check out Pat's CNBC segment. So that's it.
No, I appreciate that. And Daniel, just a little bit of a boomerang. AMD did have an ARM-based design about 10 years ago, and they were building kind of their I/O that could work both with x86 and an ARM core. AMD abandoned that for various reasons. I believe that they did that because of focused resources. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of pressure for ARM in the data center until there's nothing magical about the ARM instruction set compared to x86. You just need to put the time and the energy to focus on low power versus performance. I think both Apple and Amazon have showed that you can have your cake and eat it too, and you could find the right I/O to connect to an ARM-based CPU. I can't imagine the amount of cost it would take to create a new custom ARM core, but I could see AMD in the future maybe taking a Neoverse core and putting it into their I/O structure if they couldn't hit the power capabilities. It would take a hit on profitability, but if the market does start to move and there's a preference for ARM-based core, AMD is a very pragmatic company. With Xilinx, all of Xilinx SoCs that they have in the data center have an ARM compute core on them. And in the Q&A in the deal, when AMD bought Xilinx, CEO Lisa Su said she's agnostic on ISAs.